Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, good midnight, whenever you're tuning into this. I hope you're finding ways to stay entertained and busy in the situation we're in. And I also hope and ask that you're still keeping in contact with friends and family and your loved ones, because in this situation you never know what's going to happen. And we're blessed to be in a time of communication where we can talk face to face, text, call. It's so simple and easy. And I guarantee you it's going to mean the world to those people, especially ones you don't hear from as much. And I also hope you're being safe and smart in the decisions you're making, where you're going, how you're going, just making sure you're sticking to your family and not going out all over the place. But today I'm going to be reading from Matthew 4, 1 through 11, and it's when Jesus is tested in the wilderness. And it says, "Then Jesus was led by the Spirit into the wilderness to be tempted by the devil. After fasting 40 days and 40 nights, he was hungry. The tempter came to him and said, 'If you are the Son of God, tell these stones to become bread.' Jesus answered, 'It is written, man shall not live on bread alone, but every word that comes from the mouth of God.' Then the devil took him to the holy city and had him stand on the highest point of the temple. 'If you are the Son of God,' he said, 'throw yourself down, for it is written, He will command His angels concerning you, and they will lift up in their hands so that you will not strike your foot against stone.' Jesus answered him, 'It is also written, do not put the Lord your God to the test.' Again the devil took him to a very high mountain and showed him all the kingdoms of the world and their splendor. 'All this I will give you,' he said, 'if you will bow down and worship me.' Jesus said to him, 'Away from me, Satan, for it is written, worship the Lord your God and serve Him only.' Then the devil left him, and the angels came and attended him." And so this story is pretty simple, pretty straightforward, is that Satan comes to tempt Jesus, and he attacks his humanity. He's hungry, and so he tempts him with food. He tries to test his abilities and powers. He even tries to get him to bow down and worship him, and he'll give him all this worldly stuff. But Jesus doesn't allow that to happen. And the big point that I want to make is he does it by quoting scripture. Every time Satan tells him to do something, or says, since he's hungry, he tempts him with bread, Jesus responds with scripture. "For it is written that man will not live on bread alone, but from every word of the mouth of God." Jump off, use your angels to save you. Or bow down and worship me and I'll give you everything in the world. Right afterwards, it's scripture that he quotes. And it needs to be the same way with us. When Satan tempts us, puts these opportunities in front of us that aren't holy, aren't good, don't glorify God, the way out of it is quoting scripture. If we're not up on our scripture, don't know enough about the Bible, don't know what we should be doing, what we shouldn't be doing, then it's very easy for us to fall into temptations, especially being isolated in this time by yourself sometimes. It's really easy to kind of just give in. And so I saw this demonstration used by someone else, but I think it's really good, especially in this time. But I have two glasses here, and the liquid inside the glass represents our sin and temptation, and the glass represents us. And so there's two ways to go about getting rid of your sin. And that's one, just quitting it cold turkey. Just pouring it out and getting rid of it. But what does that leave us? That leaves us empty and allows for something else to take the place, whether it's another sin, something that's not good, something that doesn't glorify God. But if we are to slowly filter in Jesus, read scripture, pray, spend time with God, we slowly start to see that the sin goes away. It becomes lighter and lighter and lighter and lighter. And this is taking a while, but until the point that the water is clear. And now instead of being filled with another sin or another evil, we're filled with Christ. We're filled with His ways. And so I'm going to encourage y'all to that when you're bored, when you're isolated, when you're alone, that you turn to Scripture. You use Scripture for the purposes of Scripture. Because sometimes we get a little off track and we just use Scripture to make ourselves feel better. That even though I sin, God's going to forgive me every time. And that's what I got. Or as long as I believe in Jesus, that's all I got to do, and I'm saved, and that's it. And Scripture's not meant just to be used for that. It's meant to protect us, to guide us, to make us better, to bring us closer to God, used to bring others closer to God. It has so many purposes, more than just to kind of be like, this makes me feel so good. I'm glad to be a Christian. But it has so much more power than that. And I just want to ask you that in this time, that when you're bored or when there's nothing to do, or you've already made 1,000 TikToks and there's no more dances to learn, is that you go to Scripture. Because we have all these ways that bring us to the world, whether it's Instagram, Twitter, Snapchat, Netflix, Hulu, Disney Plus, Amazon Prime, Crave TV, I think it was Crackle, whatever. There's one thing out there that's more important than any of that, than catching up on the latest TV shows or watching something new. It's getting into Scripture. And one of the things that I did is, even when I'm scrolling through Instagram or stuff like that, some of the pages I follow are daily Bible verses. And so I can read maybe 10 verses a day when I go through it. But that doesn't need to be the primary source of the Scripture that I'm getting. The Scripture that I need to use to protect myself from sin, to protect myself from Satan. I try to do a decent job of, in this time it's really hard to go out and share the gospel, and so that's one of the ways we can do it now is on Instagram. Is if we see a good verse that can relate to the times, what's going on in your life, you can post it on your story or just as a post or whatever for people to see. And you never know. One person could look at that and be like, I needed that. I'm going to read more. And then they read more and more. And so Scripture has so many purposes and so many powers. And I just ask that you get into it that way, since Christ was so developed in his knowledge of Scripture, he was able to resist every sin. Anything, for whether it was using his powers for his own use, or to help himself. He was so into the Scripture that he knew not to do that he knew that he came for the purpose to die on the cross, to be resurrected, and to save us. And so the Bible tells us to be more like Christ. And so one of the ways we can be more like Christ is to know what he says, to know his word, and just to dig into that. And I'm not saying, again, that all those other apps are bad, but they definitely have some evil on them. I know before that I've struggled with Snapchat and some of the sins that it allows, and Instagram and all the other things that you can see on there and do on there. But you have to find a way to that, when you can get into the Bible, into Scripture, that will protect you from those things, that you'll understand that I don't need to be following this page, looking at this page. I don't need to be talking to this person, because all they do is tempt me to want to not be myself, to be a bad example. I've finally given in to downloading and looking at TikToks, and there's some TikToks on there that do not promote stuff that glorifies God. A lot of the lyrics and everything that some of the songs have, it's a lot, and it's not always good. But if you base your life, your reason, and your faith on Scripture, then you can protect yourself from that. You can understand what I should be listening to, what I should be watching, what I should be looking at, and you can get a control and hold of your sin better. And the more Scripture you put in, the more you filter out the sin, and you're still full, but you're full of Christ. And I hope I didn't ramble too much or get lost or lose you, but that's what I got. Again, I hope y'all are staying safe, being smart, just continue to pray for the situation that's going on. And I'll definitely have another video up. Probably try to get it earlier done so y'all have all day to look at it and not just from now until then. But I'll definitely post videos daily, and then if I come across something or I feel led to make another one, I'll post, and I'll keep sending out the links. And so I hope y'all are having the time of your lives in this crazy crisis and situation. I love all of y'all. If you feel like sharing this or having a way to reach out to others, go ahead. This isn't just for y'all. It's intended for y'all. But if you feel like someone needs to hear this, send them a link or whatever. I don't expect this to blow up. The purpose of this is to reach out to y'all and continue to preach to y'all, to minister to y'all, to give y'all the word, and to keep your spirits up and all that. So feel free to send it out to people. Just remember, this is for y'all. So thank you. Love y'all. Stay safe.